So we're the kind of people who just dive in and do something before we know what we're doing, which is probably, I don't know, I feel like 50% of the people are on the same page, and then 50% are the people who show up at a webinar like this and want to know all the details before they get started. So we've learned a lot. We've had chickens for probably, I don't know, 10 years, 11 years or so.
Oh, longer than that.
12 years.
Yeah.
We started in the urban setting. We had backyard chickens, and then we moved out to the country. So now we have country chickens.
Country chickens.
And Savannah, as far as I know, has only had country chickens.
Correct.
But she's a chicken expert. She has written articles. She's a guru. So I'm really glad that she jumped on the call with us tonight. I want to tell you guys before we get started ways that you can connect with us, because we love to stay connected. We all three have Instagram accounts. I am Lacey at Schoolhouse Farm. Drew has
the Schoolhouse Life.
Mm-hmm. And Savannah, you are the Teenage
Homesteader. Yes.
Teenage Homesteader. And she shares really great stuff there. So make sure you're following us along in those places so we can kind of stay in touch. And we also have a really great thriving online community, the Schoolhouse Life on Facebook. So we would love for you to participate in there as well. You'll get some say in what our topics are going to be as they come out, and some of the freebies we have going on there, some of our favorite products we talk about for homesteading, and lots of good conversations happening amongst people with similar goals, life goals, right?
Self-sufficiency goals.
Self-sufficiency, that's right. So anyway, yeah, we're excited. Go ahead and feel free to chat and ask questions as we go, but we do have your questions that you filled out when you registered for the webinar. So we've used that to kind of frame out what we're going to talk about tonight. Starting with I want to frame the conversation out because a lot of people were asking questions about vaccinations and keeping chickens healthy. And we should have called this the holistic chicken chat because I think are all of the same mindset. We don't really medicate our birds. And so far that hasn't really been an issue. We have some alternatives. I was going to say, you got to ask
Savannah. Savannah, do you medicate birds?
No.
Okay.
So there's the option of the vaccination and the Medicaid starter, and I've never done either of those.
Yeah, we haven't either.
Neither have we. So we're all on the same page there. If you're kind of like, ooh, I don't know about that. Our birds have been very, very healthy. We have had some issues a lot of times that come from when we get day-old chicks from places. A lot of times they'll have some issues, but usually it has more to do with stress than it really does, or maybe a virus they brought in from the breeder. But hatchery, it's really something that you can generally take care of without medicating. And then we have tools that we use, just like we use for our own bodies. We use immune boosting tools on the chickens. And there's actually a lot of research on how using holistic medications on birds is more effective and increases production. So avoiding some of the antibiotics is really why we wanted to have our own chickens. Avoiding some of that medication that comes, when you eat animals or the eggs of animals that have eaten those things is really why we wanted to have our own. So we love doing it ourselves so that we can have kind of full reign over what they get access to. So when we're talking about using or being holistic with our birds, if we see an issue pop up, we really deal with it and use things like we have essential oils like cinnamon and clove, and we'll add that to their water and sometimes sprinkle it on their feed. But overall, you'll probably find that chickens aren't generally as sickly as you might think they'd be if they're in a really healthy environment.
Well, that's what I was going to say is if you get a good environment, a healthy environment for your chicken, which kind of goes back to like, we'll cover it some, but like how we're including our chickens, like free ranging our chickens or keeping them out of their own feces for a long period of time is really, really important.
And fresh air is important, and sun and grass is really important for them. A lot of times, just to kind of break down what you'll find at the grocery stores, it'll say things like free range and it'll say things like vegetarian fed, which I don't know if you've met a chicken recently, but they actually really like meat. They love meat. They love bugs. They love, in fact, one of the reasons we love to have them on our farm is they eat all kinds of pests, and including not just bugs, but all the way up to mice and snakes. So when you see vegetarian fed, you might want to scratch your head and be like, well, were they happy?
Right. Yeah.
Because they want protein. They want to eat those things. And so I think it's important to just remember that what you're reading on the packaging and they're acting it as if it's a selling point might not actually be a selling point. And because when we bring that home and we get to like watch our chickens, we get to kind of make those decisions for them. But anyway, okay.
So, Savannah, you want to jump in on any of that? You're going to have to just jump in.
Yeah, go ahead. Interrupt.
I think another really important thing when it comes to, especially, this is something I dealt with a couple years ago, is biosecurity. So like when you're bringing in new animals, making sure to quarantine them away from your other animals to make sure that they're healthy. Because I made the mistake of quarantining for like 2 weeks one time, and that wasn't quite enough, and my entire flock got coccidia. I learned the hard way. That's another, it doesn't involve medication or anything, but it's just always making sure you're bringing in healthy birds.
So how long do you quarantine? I mean, that's basically quarantining, right?
Before introducing them to the flock, right?
Yes. So there would generally be like another pen somewhere a decent bit away from the other chickens, like not within sneezing distance. I mean, we know a decent bit about that right now.
Right.
And I think yes. So I would generally, the 2 weeks wasn't quite enough last time, so I would generally go towards 3 or 4 weeks to make sure everyone's really healthy before integrating them.
Okay.
We typically cycle our chickens. So we'll have a batch of chickens that we have like layers for usually about 2 years, and then we'll process all those chickens or sell them really cheap online and just bring in a whole new batch.
A whole new flock. So actually Savannah has a much different kind of take on chicken keeping, and she is really into like rare breeds, and she's done a lot of growing rare breeds and raising rare breeds, and we are very much of like mutt factory chicken, not factory, that's the wrong word, but mutt chickens. I prefer
the fancy term land race,
right? Yeah. So the chickens that live out here are the chickens that live out here, right? We have gotten chickens from here and chickens from there, and we are not particular about our layers. In fact, we like them to be very diverse. We love all the different color eggs, which I know Savannah does too, but she's very careful about keeping breeds together and that kind of thing. And we have a different thing going on. So it just depends on what you're really interested in doing, because Savannah's made a business out of selling those breeds, and we have sold a few eggs here and there. So knowing what your goals are when you're going into raising chickens is really important, because it will change what your infrastructure is going to look like, right? So we don't have a lot of different pens for our chickens. We have an incubator, we have a brooder, we have the coop that is mobile, and that's all we have. When we started in the backyard, we had a small coop that was big enough. We got 4 birds. We got 3 Rhode Island Red and 1 Leghorn, because that's what they had at Tractor Supply. And they were great layers, and we had them for many years. One of the questions that people actually asked us is, how big does your coop need to be for a specific amount of birds? And I don't know the exact measurements. I think you can find them online. Most coops that you'll find,
I bet you Savannah knows,
tell you. Yeah, I don't know. Do you know how many square feet a chicken needs?
So the minimum amount required for a chicken to really be healthy is 4 square feet in the pen. And if you don't allow them to free range, they need a minimum of 10 square feet in the run. But I always recommend to build as big as you possibly can, because chicken math is a thing, and you'll want to add and you'll not have room to add.
So. That is so true.
So true. I think that's so funny, because that's basically why we moved away from the city, is because we could only have 4 chickens. One question that did pop up is that how many chickens do you need for like how many eggs? So somebody was like, oh, I want 5 eggs a day, then really 5 chickens, right? And that's when they're really laying at their peak during the year.
I feel like I would say like 7, so that
just to have a buffer,
because they lay every 26 hours, so you got like a little bit of overlap.
That's actually really funny, because I am writing an article on that very topic today, and I've been working on it.
Oh, yay!
And depending on the breeds that you have, it can vary a little bit. But based on the average chicken, people recommend for every dozen eggs you want a week to keep 3 chickens. So for every 3 chickens, they say you'll probably get about a dozen eggs.
Oh, that's a good
math.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
So Dustin actually brought up a good thing to keep in mind as well, because city dwellers need to keep in mind what the ordinances are in any given township. So it could be different. It just depends on your neighborhood. If you live and you have an HOA, you need to keep that into consideration. When we were in the city, it was more about noise. So there weren't a lot of restrictions. But if we had a rooster, it could be an issue because they're loud. And then I know with bees, there was a rule about 50 feet from the neighbor's property line. But again, if you have sort of friendly neighbors, it really depends. A lot of times neighborhoods will go in and be like, I hope you get chickens so that I can have some eggs, right?
Yeah.
So it really just depends.
You can make more friends.
On who your neighbors are in a lot of these situations, because the ordinances are there just for the complainers, right? They're there for the people who don't want chickens. But for the people who do, if they don't complain, it's nobody cares, right? So, okay, what else do we want to discuss?
If we're laying out, I think the most common question was starting a backyard flock.
A backyard flock.
So really the basics of it is you need to find a hatchery that is a reputable hatchery.
Whoa. First, you need to determine where your chickens are going to live. I think that's more important than finding the birds.
No, I say just order them.
That's
Once
right.
they show up at the door, you will figure out.
That is definitely Drew's mentality. So, so not just a coop, but you want to know where your baby chicks are going to go, because baby chicks are not generally safe to just put out in the coop, right? So we call it a brooder situation. When we were in the city, that meant we had a cardboard box with a heat lamp, okay?
In the garage.
Or in the living room. Just depends.
Or utility room.
In the utility room, yeah. So you want to have a place to keep those chicks warm and cozy for a little while until they feather out. And you'll know when they feather out because they get real ugly for a little bit. Like teenagers, right, Savannah?
Yes.
A little awkward, and you're like, oh, and then they're cute again. But yeah, so you want a brooder is what we generally call it, and it's warm, and you feed them in a way that they can drink as chicks and eat as chicks. So
and with the heat lamp, it's important to consider fire safety. We've had some issues in the past with that, so putting a heat lamp on top of a cardboard box is never a good idea.
Although these new LED ones are better, but anyway, yeah. Savannah?
I highly, highly recommend heat plates. Okay. I started using those, and I will never go back because there's not a fire risk, and the chicks really enjoy it a lot more than a heat lamp.
Are those the ones? Are those the ones they can crawl under, or they just stand on top? Yeah.
Yes, they crawl underneath them, so it feels a lot more like a mother hen, and you raise calmer chicks that way too.
Oh, I love that.
Okay.
Which brings up a good point. If you have an opportunity to skip the brooder altogether and just have a broody chicken and let her raise those babies, that's the way to go.
Yeah. That's like advanced chicken rearing though.
Yeah. And then there's predators to deal with and such. But anyway.
Okay. So find a permanent place for your full grown chickens, set up a brooder setup. Mm-hmm. Then can you order your chicks?
Yes.
So
usually what we do is we get chicks, and then on the way home with the chicks from the post office, we stop by and get like a rubber tote and the heat lamp and the stuff that we're going to use for the brooder that time around. But you don't have to do it that way. You can plan. Yeah,
you can plan. And then the hatcheries, I don't know, Savannah, do you feel comfortable recommending a hatchery, or we don't hatchery?
She does. I know because she recommended this week. I saw.
Oh yeah, McMurray.
Yes, McMurray.
Okay.
They're great people, and they have outstanding customer service, and they've got a really good selection of breeds for both egg laying and meat production and rare breeds as well.
So I have a question for you about that, because we've gotten our birds from a little bit of everywhere. We've gotten chicks, we've gotten eggs, we've gotten full-grown birds. In fact, we bought some from Savannah, and they were great. So if somebody is wanting to skip the baby stage, it really is random when we do that. People will give us chickens. We will find, somebody wants to sell a few, whatever the case may be. And that's where we'll start. And that is way easier because it does take 5 to maybe longer months for a chicken to go from tiny baby chick to egg laying chicken. And some people are impatient and don't want to.
Especially when you get them in the spring, depending on when you get them, you might hit the winter months and then you're not getting eggs until the following spring. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, which can be frustrating for people who are, especially only have 4 hens, So anyway, where would you recommend people getting full grown, ready to lay chickens?
So the first place I would look is locally, like the chicken people in your area. Like I've done that sort of thing. And you can usually find someone who you would trust to buy chickens from that's raised them and cared for them. But if you can't find anyone there, you can often go to feed stores, and the feed stores will special order started pullets for you there. And that's another place you can get them.
A feed store, like, I don't know if we have any local.
Probably like our Pittsburgh feed store.
Like a locally owned, not a chain kind of place. Okay.
Yeah, probably. And there are some hatcheries that will mail like started pullets, but you get into really expensive shipping costs when they're trying to mail a bunch of fully almost full grown birds.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say too, it is pretty fun to go to the post office and pick up a box of chicks that are peeping, and the post office people are like, "Oh, what's in there?" And it's tiny baby chicks. It's pretty fun.
So the one thing we've done with baby chicks, and then we'll move on, is when you place that order in the mail, if you do go that way, if you have neighbors that are also interested or people close by, you can save a little bit of money by getting a bigger order of chicks, and it also
always brings your price down.
Yeah, and it gives the chicks a better chance of living through the mail. Like if you're ordering just what usually the minimum is like 10, if you order that many and it's cold, some of them can freeze, but if you get like 75 or 100, everybody huddles together and stays warm. So just a little tip there on ordering.
Just one thing I want to bring up, because this is one of the issues that we've mainly had when we order from a breeder, is pasty butt. I don't know what the actual name for it is, but we call it pasty butt. Savannah, is there a different name for it?
That's what I call it.
That's what you call it too? Oh, I thought there was going to be a technical chicken name for that.
So what did we determine it's from?
It's a bacteria, right?
Okay.
Gut bacteria?
Gut bacteria. So it's something that can happen to baby chicks. And if it happens, what it does is it blocks their vent. And the vent is where the poop comes out. And if the vent is blocked and they can't poop, then they will die. So one of the best things to do is to just be aware and watch for that. And if it does happen, we've had actually great success just cleaning those butts off with some vinegar. And sometimes we'll add some essential oils to that vinegar and just use a Q-tip and clean off that pasty butt. But just so you know, that is normal. Things happen. Chicks, I really feel like, are a little bit like goldfish. You have to just be aware that some death will happen when you take on the role of raising animals. And farm animals are not pets like dogs and cats. Like they die more. So I just want to prepare you a little bit for that. You're not going to be a failure if one or two dies or even more. It's just part of figuring all of this out.
I want to hear Savannah's tips on pasty butt. What do you got?
Another thing I'd add on the pasty butt is it can be caused by too much stress as well. So like you said, it's especially common after shipping. And if the heat lamp, if they're too hot, it happens with too much heat, which is also stress, but it's just another way. If you're consistently seeing it, you might need to change your brooder settings and raise the heat lamp so they're not quite as hot. And one thing that Lisa Steele, who is natural, she keeps her chickens with like herbs and all sorts of natural solutions. She recommends sprinkling cayenne pepper on their food if you're consistently seeing pasty butt, and it's supposed to help. So that's another thing.
Well, that's simple. I like that. And yeah, that actually brings up a good point when we're just back to brooders really quickly. Like we do want the chicks to have warmth, but we also want them to have a way away from the warmth as well. So when you're putting your heat lamp in your brooder box, just make sure there's a space where they can get out from the heat if they would like to. So I think that's a really
and you can adjust. You can literally see like if the heat lamp's too low or too high. If you're doing heat lamp, I really next want to go towards Savannah's plates, brooder plates, but because you'll see like a ring of chicks around the outside
trying to get away
of the heat lamp, and then they're too hot. If they're too cold, they'll all be huddled in the middle chirping. So you kind of just can watch and raise and lower accordingly.
So let's see. Jennifer asks, can you advise on the best way to introduce the chicks to the coop after the brooder? So this will be different depending on whether there's already chickens in the coop versus if there aren't. If there's already chickens in the coop, it's a whole different ballgame. If there's not chickens in the coop, it's a much simpler, more straightforward process. And really that you can put them out in the coop. Okay, no chickens yet.
Yeah.
But that is the question that will come up, is how do you introduce chickens? And we can talk about that in a minute. But yeah, I mean, for us, it's a matter of, is it warm enough in the coop? If it's warm enough at night and the temperatures aren't getting low enough to freeze, or I don't know, what temperature would you say?
I go with 50 degrees.
Yeah,
I don't know what.
And the birds are feathered out, then they're pretty safe to go in the coop. If you feel like you just want to be sure, you could move the heat lamp into the coop and give them a few nights with that as well. But the transition is pretty straightforward, and they're usually pretty excited to have more space.
It does matter, like if it's going to be a free range setup or like a closed run. Mm-hmm. If it's free range, I like to close them in there for at least a few days, just so they learn, like, this is home base. This is where you sleep. If you just stick them in there and then they end up popping out, they're going to pick wherever they can roost to make their new home.
That is very
and then
true.
For the rest of their lives, you will fight them on where they have to sleep.
That's not, you can retrain them by closing them in the coop later, but
maybe
if they find something they like better,
right.
then they'll probably just always go back to that.
Okay, so let's talk about predator control, because that's like a good natural step.
And that's one of the things that when you move them to the coop, you're really going to have to worry about most.
Well, quite honestly, what we've learned this year is even in the brooder, you have to be aware of predator control.
Well, our brooder is outside now, which is different than a lot of people, but yeah.
Yeah, so we lost some baby chicks to snakes this year.
And last year. And we moved a different brooder, got a different brooder, didn't seal it up enough. So snakes can be a serious issue for a brooder, for baby chicks. When you're making your brooder, if it's going to be outside, make sure it's just well, and for
sealed
several
up.
reasons, because if you keep the heat lamp on, of course, that's going to draw snakes in at night because they want to be where it's warm, right? So there's that. Then these baby chicks are easy bait for them because they're trapped in there. So, normally we like to have rat snakes around, but if they're eating our baby chicks, we don't like them anymore. So that's one predator you have to be aware of. There's possums, and when you're in the city especially, raccoons are a major issue. We have very few raccoon issues out here, but when we were in the city, raccoons were a major issue. So just be aware that's some of the things that you need to deal with. But when we're talking about that, there are some things and precautions you can take to protect your flock. One of which, the major thing out here in the country, is we have electric netting that keeps out pretty much any of the predators, aside from snakes, that would try to come in and get them.
So the major brand of electric netting is Premier One, and they make a poultry net, and you just hook it up. You can get a solar charger, a regular charger, and it comes in like different sections, and you just stick it in the ground. What I like about it is it's mobile. So we can give the chickens fresh grass over and over and over again, and they're not stuck in one spot.
But the city comes with different issues.
You could do that. You could use it in the city too.
But the problem in the city is that you're generally not allowed to have roosters, and roosters are really one of the major protections for chickens, especially from hawks. And other things that are flying from above. And the Premier netting will not protect from hawks. We have dogs, and we have geese, and we have roosters to protect our chickens from hawks. So that can be a little bit tricky when you're in the city. A lot of times what people will do in the city is they'll have a run that's covered even above the chickens to protect from the sky.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. Have you ever dealt with hawks much, Savannah?
I've been lucky enough not to, and I have had the Premier One netting that multiple roosters, and I've never had to deal with hawks.
Yeah.
But my biggest issues have been weasels at night, and they will come in and they'll take out your entire flock in one night.
Yeah.
So that's one thing to look out for, like when you're building your coop, and you have to make sure like they will get in the smallest, like 1 inch square is all they need, and they can get in if they're small.
Really?
Oh man.
So one thing people do, and I know Savannah does this, is close up their coop at night. We actually do not close up our coops at night because we have geese and we have the netting. We haven't had nighttime issues with anything. And the dogs are generally nearby, and they'll scare a lot of things off. But I do, Savannah, you do, right? You close your coop every night?
Yes.
It's on a timer, is that right?
Yes, so I did buy a automatic chicken door, and it closes on a timer. But before I had it, I would just have to go out every night and close it, and then go out back in the morning and open them up.
And we did that a lot too, especially when we lived in the city. But now our chickens are actually really far away from us. So one less thing to do, right?
It's been, since we moved out here, we haven't closed them up at night, but they've always been in a Premier fence, and that stopped all the nighttime. We've never really lost any at night to predators.
Not unless they've gotten out of the fence and started roosting somewhere else without our permission.
Okay, what's Jennifer's question? How far should you dig the hardware cloth below the soil and horizontal to help protect the run? So if you're doing a run, I've heard a foot just to bend it out, and most predators will try and dig right at the fence line. So a foot.
So not vertically, but horizontally.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. What have you done, Savannah? I know yours is like off the ground, right? So it's not a problem.
Yeah, I've never actually buried the hardware cloth because that is, like you said, I have it off the ground, which deters a lot of predators right there. It's just raising it like 18 to 24 inches off the ground. Mm-hmm. And then like y'all have, I've got the Premier One netting. So I've never worked with the hardware cloth, but I would go with what Drew said as far as like about a foot.
Yeah. Something simpler. I don't know if they make it easier. Like I'm thinking even maybe just one wire of electric if you're in the city around any kind of coop might be something that you could do without buying a whole fence.
You could try it.
Yeah. Just to deter a lot of those
raccoons
predators.
are pretty stinking smart though.
Yeah. So they'll peel back. If they can reach a chicken through the chicken wire, they'll just grab what they can get and rip it right off the chicken.
That happens.
It's very annoying because it's a waste.
Like that, yeah.
Such a waste. They just destroy a whole bird for one like chicken foot. So raccoons in the city were definitely the biggest issue for us. And weasels, fortunately, we haven't had to deal with weasels, but they sound terrible. Possums are another issue.
Okay, so let's go. Next is free range setup versus a run. We've kind of covered on that.
Let me just tell you what the difference is, because sometimes it's hard to keep all of that straight. So free range means that they can go anywhere in your yard, basically, really anywhere. If you don't have a fence, they don't care about your yard either. They'll just go wherever, right?
So you're giving free range a definition of no fence at all.
No fence at all. Okay. That's what I think, right?
Well, I thought ours were free range. What would you put ours as?
So ours are tricky because we move them, but they are in a fence, but we move the fence.
We tell them they're free range, but they're not.
They don't.
They have the illusion of being free range.
It's sort of like a dog with the collar. They feel free, but they're not.
I would consider ours free range.
Ours, it's not a permanent run. A run I think of as something that's like, although I still, if they don't have the option to roost somewhere else, then I feel like they have a run. If they're
Savannah, you gonna weigh in on this?
Well, I feel like both your chickens and my chickens have the advantages of a free range environment, but without the disadvantages and dangers of an actual free range life
situation.
So,
yeah. And
I call it a free range environment, but it might not necessarily be actually free range.
A free range environment. That's a nice way to put it.
I like it. So we actually have had our chickens free range completely. And really the only reason that we don't is because they can't be trained out of the garden. So they will eat everything. They will scratch up everything. That was one of the questions is, can your chickens free range and how do you keep them out of the garden? The answer is you don't. So you keep them in a fence.
But there is a time and place to bring them into the garden, at the end of a season.
Sure. When you want to turn it over and you want everything kind of destroyed. And
for your chickens that are in that free range environment, you can bring that fence in and fence them over the garden area and let them eat everything up, stir it all up, fertilize, and then move them to another.
Yeah, and honestly, I love seeing chickens all over our property until I have one ripe tomato and they peck the red spot every time it gets ripe, and there's nothing more frustrating. So,
or you have those new little seedlings coming up and they eat all the seedlings,
or they just scratch it or whatever.
Or they decide they have like 3 acres they could be on and they want to hang out on your porch.
Right.
Yes. They will never fails decide to roost right outside the door and poop all over right where you take your shoes off. So,
Rana says we've been putting chicken wire under the mulch in our flower beds and it's kept them out so far.
Oh, okay. because they can't really scratch.
Yeah, we've done that too.
And I just asked somebody the other day, because she posted a beautiful picture on Instagram of her beds and the chickens scratching in between her beds. And I said, okay, how are you keeping your chickens from eating all that garden stuff? And she said that they had put in the what do you call it, sprinklers that come on when they sense motion censored sprinklers for deer, and they had worked on the chickens too. So I was like, okay. Well,
so it depends on what you want to invest in time wise and monetarily.
Yeah, exactly. You could maybe work around it.
Yeah.
But in our experience, it's less stress, and we know where the eggs are going to be, which is really nice.
So let's define a run then. A run is, to me, like almost like a dog run. It's like it could be a chain link fence, it could be a chicken wire fence, but it's one permanent spot where the chickens are going to be forever, unless you really put some time and effort into moving it. And the advantage to me on that I see is that you can feed compost in there and really build up some nice organic matter and compost to pull back out and use it in other places.
Well, we actually had one that we had structured, and we would just move the whole thing. I think they make a lot of chicken coops you can do that with.
Oh, you mean like what we had in the city?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that is an option. If you want to be able to move, you can get mobile chicken coops with runs attached.
Yeah.
That are mobile. So that is an option.
And I've seen people build like tunnels that go all the way around the perimeter of their garden, that the chickens can go in those tunnels.
Yeah.
I guess the idea is to keep pests from getting to their garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's like, the sky is the limit when it comes to making chickens work for you. You know, it's kind of like I said, I mentioned fish already. It really is like, you can have any aquarium that you want with fish, right? You can put it in your living room, you can put it in a bedroom. And the same is true with chickens. You can really make them fit your lifestyle. And it's one of the things that I love the most about them is, you know, even if you had 1 or 2 chickens in your backyard, it's so satisfying to be making something or baking something and be like, oh no, I don't have an egg. And then go get one out of the coop and come back and you have your egg, right? Like, to make a recipe, it's like the best thing ever.
Oh yeah.
So that was layers. I feel like that was a lot of layer talk. If you have any more layer questions, I feel like we hit on most of those. Somebody did have a specific question about what to feed baby chicks. And there's a layer starter. And the protein content, I think, was a specific question. Should be 20% or higher.
Yeah, I look for like 22%. I don't know. And it depends on if it's meat birds or layers. Like, I like to do like 25% if it's going to be a layer. And I mean, I feel like that's a pretty easy one to Google and get some answers on. But really, when you go in the feed store, you'll see layer feed and broiler feed. And broiler is a meat chicken, you know, so just start with those, and that's the best place. And then I think we all agreed we don't do medicated, so you have to make that decision if you want to do medicated or not. But to me, it's kind of like a kid. If you medicate them at the beginning of their lives, they're just going to have trouble.
Like a kid.
Yep, just like a person. If you highly medicate somebody or something from the beginning of their life, they're going to have trouble their whole lives.
It's harder to come back to a kind of a balanced state for that, for sure, because their little bodies, you know, it's a lot more to recover. And they kind of become reliant on that. So yeah, like, just keep that in mind. You know, if you can keep them alive without medicating them, they'll be stronger and healthier, and in the long run, you'll be better off.
Yeah.
So, okay.
You got anything else to add, Savannah, for layers?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that covered it pretty well. I mean, I couldn't think of anything that I would have to add on top of that.
We actually didn't talk about breeds, and some people did want to know what were good breeds for layers. And
I feel like the best one to start with is for Savannah. Is somebody asked what the best breed for northern India would be?
Northern India. Okay, so what kind of climate is that exactly? Like, is that gonna?
It could be like Nepal, right? Like, couldn't it be like the mountains?
Yeah. First thing that came to my mind was Brahma, but I don't. Yeah,
Buff Brahma, right?
So I actually just wrote an article on that, and it was covering
Northern Indian chicken breeds.
Well, it was covering all of the different like climates and the breeds for that climate and the different breed classes. So you can look at that, and you can look like the Mediterranean breed chickens were bred in like Spain, and so those are obviously going to be for your hotter ones. And then the Asiatic breeds are like the Brahmas, and those are going to be the good ones for the colder climate. So that's a really good thing to look at, is the breed classification when you're looking at breeds and looking at the ones that are best suited for your climate.
Okay, and you're going to give us a link to that article. Do you have it online?
I do have it online. I could probably go find it right now, actually.
Well, that's okay. We'll send it out on the replay of this video so everybody can check that out.
Yeah, I'll send y'all the link over.
Okay, but off the top of your head, North America, what are the top 2 egg-laying breeds?
For North America, I'd say probably, like in backyards, I'd say Barred Rocks in Rhode Island and is most readily available in feed stores.
You cut out there. Rhode Island Reds, is that what was the other one?
And Barred Rocks.
And Barred Rocks. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and usually I see Leghorns in in there too. So that'd be the only one.
I don't like Leghorns. You like?
I don't like Leghorns either.
They lay really well. They what?
They play really well for. And I like the breeds that are a little bit more heritage and they can lay for a longer period of
time.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's why I'm not too into the Leghorns, is because they're so commercialized.
Well, Leghorn was the first chicken we had that got egg bound. And that was so traumatic. We were very new to farming and chickens, and that chicken had like, I don't know, she probably had like 12 eggs stuck inside of her. And we ended up having to kill her, and we did an autopsy, and she was just full of eggs. So that's
true. That's a little
I never got over Leghorns after
I don't think we've had a Leghorn since.
No, I've kind of rolled off ever having another one.
Didn't even notice that. That's funny.
Okay, so yeah, then the last thing is meat chickens. So
well, wait, one quick question or one quick thing about coops, because a lot of people said, how much is it going to cost to get a backyard coop or a coop in general? It's going to depend on your size. It's going to depend on what you want to spend, because there are some really like high class chicken coops out there.
Let's just say the sky's the limit.
The sky is the limit. I would say you probably want to expect to spend at least $300 on a coop. Now, you could buy and build the materials yourself, and there's lots of really great plans out there that you can follow. We really just rigged something up. In fact, we used the base of a wheelbarrow and built it the first time, and it was a little rickety, but it got the job done.
Very rickety. But what I tell people is that chickens don't care. Chickens don't like fancy.
Yeah, you're doing fancy for you, not for the chickens.
Yeah, as long as the chickens don't know plumb, they don't know level. All they want is somewhere to roost and something to eat. So.
And honestly, they probably choose a tree over whatever you make if they had the choice. So yeah, just some perspective there. But yeah, so just get started.
But you do have to have it in your yard. So
yeah,
you want it to
You
look nice.
can park it behind a bush or something.
Right.
Anyway, so yeah, I mean, there's really like endless options when it comes to getting started. I would say that really to do everything from start to finish, anyone probably on the low end is going to spend about $300 just on all the materials and the birds themselves and everything. And then upwards from there, depending on how many and coop and all of those things. So, okay. So next.
So meat chickens
birds
was the last thing. I do see someone asked about like having chickens outside during the winter. I'm a firm believer that there's chickens, and Savannah, you can probably tell me different, but there's chickens living everywhere. So you got chickens in Minnesota, you got chickens in Florida, and I think you kind of hinted on it. If you choose the right breed, they can live outside wherever they are. I see people like putting heat lamps in North Carolina in their coops and stuff, and we've never done that, and they've been just fine. So I don't know. What are your thoughts, Savannah? Same?
I definitely agree with you. I have a friend who's, bless her heart, she babies her chickens, and every single winter night she had a heat lamp out there for her Australorps. And our mild Virginia winters are like, you don't need to be doing that. They're fine.
Yeah.
But if you do live in a climate with really harsh winters, the biggest thing you want to take into consideration is frostbite. So if you're going to have an Alaskan winter, you don't want a big, huge Leghorn with a giant comb that's going to get frostbitten.
Yeah.
So I look out for chickens that have like the rose comb, such as Wyandottes, because that's close to their head and it's not going to get frostbitten. And then there's the other breeds like Brahmas and Cochins that have feathered legs, and they'll also be able to keep themselves warm because they've just got a lot of fluff.
Yeah.
Good point. So yeah, there's not really a need to bring them inside generally.
I mean, we have had some, and they survive. It's unfortunate, but they survived the frostbite too. I mean, we've had some.
Have they had frostbite?
Yeah, we've had a few. Like, I mean, it was like 5 years ago. We had like those negative or single digit days in the winter, and we had a few that got black combs, but you know, they were.
I've had that happen with roosters before, and it's I feel bad for them, but it's not usually the end of the world as long as it doesn't get infected.
Yeah. Okay, so then the last thing is just meat chickens. Talking about in the industry, we call them broilers. In the industry, not in the industry, but
in the agricultural world.
Yeah, in the agricultural world, they're broilers. And I feel like they kind of split into maybe 3 different categories. You've got your heritage breeds, you've got Freedom Rangers, and you've got Cornish Cross.
So, okay. So
how do you feel about that?
Wait. No. Okay, because you have your heritage breeds, and then you have your bred for meat breeds, and then you have your hybridized, like super kind of Frankenstein.
Your
breeds.
McDonald's breed.
Yeah. Meat industry breeds. And that's what they are. If you were talking about chicken that you get from the grocery store, 97% of it is going to be Cornish cross, which is a bird that grows so fast and eats so much that it can't walk, can't fly. It doesn't look like a chicken.
We had a friend talk us into some this last round, and we have them out there right now. And they, I didn't realize you can't free choice feed them, which means just giving them feed all the time. So they just, self-regulate. Cornish cross don't self-regulate. They just park themselves next to the feeder and just peck until, like, we went out there to get them, and they were like these monster Frankenstein-sized chickens that were just like giant. They couldn't even stand up. And we pulled the feed away from them, and in a couple of days they were, they had walking again. But yeah, that breed is kind of crazy, and that's the first time we've ever tried them. Freedom Rangers, I really like that. Ones we get are from freedomrangerhatchery.com, and they, the people there are super nice. The breed turns it into a good carcass size in 7 to 8 weeks. Is that right? 7 to 8 weeks? Yeah.
We usually did ours for 9 to 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we've gone longer. I think that the real key with getting that variety of bird is they're very good at freedom. Like, they're good at foraging. Yeah. They'll eat whatever is in the grass. They'll eat, they'll just eat well. Whereas some of these other varieties are not, the wildness has sort of been bred out of them. So they're waiting for their meal and sitting by the plate, to eat. So Freedom Rangers are much more like wild birds and
a lot closer. Anyhow.
Closer, yeah.
And then we've got the heritage breeds that we tried pretty much every heritage meat bird breed that there was, and I know a couple of them we got to like 17, 20 weeks, and they were still like just bone. And
we killed them.
Yeah, we
they
killed them.
They made a decent stew, but that was about it.
It's not like you'd have to that be your only option for meat birds to like really be happy with that breed.
Yeah.
But
I feel like when you are looking for heritage breeds, if you want to do the whole dual purpose thing, I really don't recommend buying from a hatchery, because all the chickens you buy from a hatchery have been more streamlined towards egg laying and more efficient. So I would, you could probably go find someone who breeds heritage chickens that they really work on breeding for not only egg characteristics but the meat production. And so those will be a little bit better than if you bought a barred rock from the hatchery, because it's not going to be bred for anything other than egg laying.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So. And
then the only other thing I was going to say, we'll include it in the replay email, is we have a video of the basics of processing. How
that was one of the main questions we got, is processing chickens. What does that look like? Is it difficult? And it isn't. There is definitely equipment that makes it way easier. And we did a video on ducks recently,
which is the same as chickens, pretty much, only easier than ducks.
Chickens are way easier than ducks. Yeah. But so we can, just share that.
We'll share that link too, so you can check out kind of our setup, and it's pretty simple. I don't know.
And I will say that, it wasn't my favorite thing to get started with, but now I can eviscerate a bird pretty dang quickly. And I think even though it's not something that we all do, It's something we should all experience, particularly if we eat meat. We should know where that comes from, what the process of getting meat from alive to eat on the table looks like. Because without knowing, we aren't really taking full responsibility for what we're doing. So not to preach at you or anything, but as gross as it sounds, it's important to know that that's a part of the process, right? Literally. So to try to get that experience, even if you don't plan to do it for yourself, maybe connect with someone who does that so that you can just connect with your food on a
just
deeper
go do
level.
it one time at least.
And one time.
Just so you know.
Yeah.
So you got that smell in your nose.
Alicia's asking a question. Let me see if I can read it. Says, I signed on late. Did you cover cleaning the coop? We did not talk about cleaning the coop, actually. We don't clean coops very often, so I'm not sure if I'm an expert on that. If there is an issue, we'll clean out, like if there's, an issue, like somebody is packing eggs and it gets real messy, but the birds generally keep it fairly clean,
Well, we designed our coop so
true.
We don't have to clean it.
That is true.
The bottom of it is just hardware cloth.
So that the poop falls right through.
Yeah.
For multiple reasons. One, we don't want to have to clean, and two, we want that poop to be on the ground, absorbing into the soil. So, I don't know, Savannah, any thoughts on that?
Well, you sound like you do have a really good coop to not have to clean frequently, but when there are coops that aren't designed like that and they have like an actual bottom, those will need to be cleaned out a little bit more often. Mm-hmm. And this might sound bad, but I would wait till it started, like if it had an ammonia smell, clean it out immediately. And that's usually when I would actually get around to like, oh, okay, the chicken's probably not enjoying this, so I need to clean it out now.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely not like, oh, clean it out every 4 weeks, because they scratch around in that. And I think it's really healthy to be able to take that they've really been enriching for several weeks and you can go put on your garden or something.
Well, and there is like the theory of a live bottom versus like a concrete or wood floor. Like if you do a deep mulch method where bottom of the coop is in contact with the actual earth,
right,
you can continue to layer mulch on top of that, and it actually,
which is Alicia even said, I've read different thoughts on how often even layering the shavings instead of cleaning, which you totally could do if it was on ground or maybe even on concrete, but if you did that on wood, your wood would rot out. So
I have mixed feelings on concrete because
maybe not
you're going to get the bacterial involvement in the worms and everything from the earth. I don't know if you're going to get that on concrete. Maybe if there's a way for them to get in.
Well, the bottom wouldn't rot out.
Yeah, the wood will rot.
The wood will rot out.
Yeah.
So that would be the major thing that you would want to keep your clean for, honestly.
And the ammonia smell, that is dangerous, because then you're getting to like your chickens are going to start having respiratory problems and all kinds of other messes.
And you notice it though, like you would smell and be like, okay.
You open up the coop and your eyes burn. It's time to clean it.
I don't let it get that far.
You're gross. Anyway, but that's it, you guys. We're only 3 minutes over 45. We are fast talkers.
That's perfect. Yeah.
All right, so we'll linger here for a few minutes. If you guys have some more questions that we didn't answer, or that just popped up in your minds while you were sitting here, we can sit here for a few minutes, but we will send the replay to you all that registered. If you didn't register because you're in the Facebook group, then it's in there anyways.
Yeah.
But we'd love to see you all in our group and start participating in everything, and check everybody out on Instagram.
And if you want to join the group, it's theschoolhouselife.com, and that'll take you straight to the Facebook group. And
theschoolhouselife.com. Will it? You sure? Oh, okay. All right. That's it. Savannah, thank you so much. Tell us about, everybody is now interested in your articles. Where can they find some of these articles that you're writing?
So if you go to you can go to Google and type in Savannah Brown morning chores, and the top result is going to be a list of all. You can click on that, and it's my page on morningchores.com, which is the blog I work for. And it's a list of all the articles I've written, and I've written on chickens, ducks, and turkeys.
Okay. All right. Very cool. All right. And so Jandra actually asked, is there a way to tell the age of hens? We got grown laying hens and are wondering if we can tell their age. Ooh. That's a tricky question. My only thought is to how much do they lay? And that might help you kind of hone in on how old they are. But I don't think there's like an identifying characteristic. I don't know. What do you think, Savannah?
No, I think you're right. It's definitely how much they lay. And you can tell, like, if the comb is a little bit not quite as perky as it might be like with the 1 or 2 year old chicken, but even still, it is kind of hard to tell. It's just, I think, like you said, egg production is going to be your best indicator there.
And we didn't really talk about that. That is something that I think is important to think about. But egg production, an egg layer goes through a phase of laying a lot when the days are long, and then when the days are shorter, they lay less frequently. So a lot of times people will put a light in their coop to keep it so they're laying every single day and more frequently. We actually tend to shy away from that. We want the chicken to experience the sort of the standard processes of nature. If you are reliant on egg production for your living, you're going to have a different view than we have probably. But so they do vary through the year too. So you want to keep that in mind. But that is something that once they get, 3 years old or so, they stop laying as much. And that's when you want to start thinking about getting new birds to fill in those gaps.
Well, I'd say like on year 2, go ahead and get your new flock started. Yeah. That's how we do it. I don't know. But
and again, we will introduce new birds, new young birds to our older flock pretty easily when we just keep the new ones in a cage in the area for a few days, and then we'll open the cage and they're acclimated to each other, and usually it's not an issue, because I know somebody did ask that question.
And again, that depends on space. So our chickens with a free range environment are a lot more likely to be nicer than if you have like a tight run where you're putting them in there. Those chickens can be a little bit meaner because they've really established what you've heard as the pecking order. So that's where it comes from.
Yeah. Dustin asked, how long did the hens live after they've stopped laying eggs?
Oh, I don't know that.
I don't know. How long is the lifespan? It's like 4 years?
The life expectancy of a chicken is 8 years old.
8?
But
wow.
Okay, but seriously, I've never seen a chicken live to 8 because predators always get them first, or they're going to get sick. So technically, they can live up to 8 years old, and people will say that. But I say if you've got a 5-year-old chicken, that's an old chicken.
That's an old chicken, an old bird. That's not a spring chicken anymore. Okay, do meat birds use or need scratch? So we have very infrequently ever had scratch for any of our birds.
Yeah.
Do you use scratch for your birds?
No, I've never used it. I just use the formulated diet. And especially since they have like the free range environment, I feel like scratch is something you would use if you've got them in a run and they can't access the grass and bugs as much as other chickens.
Yeah. And with meat birds, I think, no, they don't need it.
Well, because you're giving them like a diet that's like designed to help them gain weight. I don't know. I've always viewed scratch as just to give them something to do. I don't really like, it's just flaked corn, I think, isn't it? I mean, it's
like, corn.
It's just like, so, I mean,
cracked corn.
You could, if you want to just give them like a little treat, but I don't think they need it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to stop there. Everybody have a really great night, dreaming chickeny dreams, and let us know if you need anything. Thanks for hopping on. Bye, Savannah. Thank you. Kiss your family for me.
Okay. Love y'all.
Love you
Bye.
too. Bye.
Bye.